Welcome to the Town of Avon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. If you are interested in having a copy of the agenda, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. This meeting is being recorded. Personal conversations are kept to a minimum, and all cell phone ringers are turned to off with any phone calls taken outside the chambers. Hearings on individual cases will be conducted in accordance with the board's rules of procedure. Planning staff will first introduce the case, provide a summary, and make a recommendation. Petitioners will be given up to 10 minutes to present their case. Persons or groups opposed to the proposal will be provided a total of 10 minutes to present objections. Persons or groups in support of the proposal will be provided with 10 minutes to present comments in support. Any individual shall be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. A person representing a group or organization that shall be allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The petitioner shall then have 5 minutes for rebuttal. No further testimony will be heard unless it is at the discretion of the board. If you are interested in commenting during any public hearing, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to staff or the appellant. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. We do understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. The chair may therefore impose an alternate time limit for each person. Thank you again for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have roll call, please?
Paul Guckenberger.
Here.
Ann Inman. Here. Catherine Ransberg.
Here.
Marcy Tashler.
Here.
Marcus Turner.
Here. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for 11/18/25. Did I get that right? Yes, I did. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, comments? And if there are none, we'll entertain a motion.
I move we accept the meeting minutes from November 18th, 2025 as presented.
A motion from Mrs. Ransberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Guckenberger. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. Next item is request for continuances or agenda modifications.
We have none.
Okay. Next item is public comment. We'll open up the floor for public comment at 6:34. Has anyone signed up to speak?
We just have the petitioner for VAR U 2508.
And
Not for public comment.
Okay. And with no one else here, we will close public comment at 6:34. Going on to, we have any old business, going on to new business. This is VARU 25-08, Rise Avon Personal Services.
Thank you. Actually, I'll speak first. No, you're fine. Thank you, President Turner and members of the board. VARU 2508 Rise Avon Personal Services, located at 1691 South Ronald Reagan Parkway, is a request for a variance of use to allow a service use, specifically wellness and beauty services, within one of the proposed buildings at this development, that not being a permitted use within the I-2 General Industrial District. This is about a 13.5 acre site located along the east side of Ronald Reagan Parkway, in between 100 South, and Bradford Road, which at some points is 200 South. It's zoned I2. There are a variety of zonings around the property, industrial as well as commercial, residential, and agricultural. This property was rezoned for this development. Most of the property was rezoned in 2021, and a smaller portion was added in 2022, with development plan review granted in 2021 for the development that you'll see on the site plan, which is in your packet as well, which would be for a maximum of 20 buildings. And there were also waivers related to some of the architectural requirements, and also to allow parking in excess of what the old zoning ordinance allowed, because the old zoning ordinance had a parking maximum, which we don't have now under the Unified Development Ordinance. Oh, yeah, apologize for the first note that says C2 general commercial. It's all, it was all zoned to I2 general industrial. And so 9 of the 20 proposed buildings have been constructed to date. And you'll see, again, I'll show you that on the site plan in a minute. These are just some gray and white photos with the snow and the overcast sky. That's the site looking northeast from Ronald Reagan Parkway. These are existing buildings here that front Ronald Reagan Parkway. There are additional buildings back behind. This is Ronald Reagan Parkway out front here. The proposed building that we're going to be talking about would be just to the south of this existing building. That's another look, just kind of looking due east from Ronald Reagan Parkway. Again, the proposed building would go right here. That's a look at the front entrance from Ronald Reagan. And again, the proposed building would be to the south here. And that's just a view of the back of the site where it abuts County Road 1050. So this is the site plan. The buildings in red are the ones that have been constructed in the first phase. The blue buildings are proposed in the second phase. And the building outlined here in green, again, Ronald Reagan Parkway is at the bottom of the page here. So north is to the left, south to the right. The building outlined in green is the subject of the variance. This building is proposed to be constructed still. And that's the one where the petitioner is asking to have personal services, specifically wellness and beauty, such as a hair salon, nail salon, massage, barber shop, those type of uses. So this site, and the petitioner can talk more to specifics of how it's developed and how it's currently used, but it's zoned industrial, but it's not your typical industrial site that has large users and large buildings. There's smaller buildings that are carved into smaller units. The intent of the development is to provide a place for entrepreneurs who maybe started their business out of their home. They need a little extra space. So they need a bigger space, but they're not to the point where they could lease a typical commercial or industrial site. So this being a use variance, there's 5 required findings. I'm going to go through those. The first is that it not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The concern that as a planning staff we would typically have with mixing more retail type service uses that draw the general public as customers into an industrial zoned property would be that oftentimes typical industrial properties have a lot of frequent heavy truck traffic that we don't really want to mix with customers coming into an industrial site if we can avoid that. This type of site doesn't have heavy truck traffic, and so we don't have that concern that adding spaces for hair salons and the like in one of the buildings would, that you'd have that conflict with heavy industrial traffic. So we don't believe that the addition of personal service uses in one building would be injurious to the public. So we believe that finding's been met. The second finding, that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. We don't see, especially with the mix of commercial, industrial, residential, agricultural zoning around this site, that the addition of the requested personal service uses would have a negative impact on adjacent properties. We don't think it would change the character of this development or the surrounding area. So we do believe the second finding has been met. The third required finding, that the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property. We do believe that the design and layout of the site with smaller buildings and smaller tenant spaces that are intended for small businesses, excuse me, is less attractive to some of your typical I2 general industrial businesses that are looking for larger spaces. So providing some flexibility here, we think, is reasonable. And this is not a condition that would be typical of most I2 zone properties, where you would have much larger, either larger single tenant buildings or even multi-tenant buildings that have much larger spaces that are suited for your more typical industrial businesses. So we do believe that this third finding has been met. The fourth finding, that the strict application of the terms of the ordinance would constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought. Similar to the last finding, the layout of small buildings and small tenant spaces is by its nature conducive to small businesses. But the ordinance does not have any zoning district where you can mix the small scale industrial uses and small scale commercial service uses. And therefore, we do think that that would provide or would result in a hardship to this property. So we do believe that there's a good case to be made that the fourth finding would be met. And then finally, the fifth finding, that it not interfere substantially with the town's comprehensive plan. Now, you may be aware, we just adopted a new comprehensive plan. However, when this request was filed, we were still operating under the old comprehensive plan. For what it's worth, the new plan recommends industrial use here, but we should be looking at the plan that was in effect at the time this request was filed, and that plan recommends innovation use for this site, and the comprehensive plan indicates the goal of embracing designation of areas and supportive programming to entrepreneurs and business producing innovation that encourage future potential for high investment, growth, and high wage opportunities. And so we do feel that it's not only does it not interfere substantially with the plan, we think it would actually meet the plan. We think that the intent of that recommendation is to grow small businesses and to allow entrepreneurs to have a place to grow their small businesses. So we think that dedicating a portion of one building to personal service uses would not interfere with the plan, and thus that finding is met. And so with our interpretation that all 5 of the required findings are met, we would recommend approval of this variance request. We would just ask that it be subject to, as has been requested, that it be limited to what's labeled as Building 16 on the site plan. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Questions for staff?
Can you go back to the site plan that shows the buildings? So would the variance would apply to the building or to the specific unit in the building?
It would apply to the building. They would have several tenant spaces in the building that could be used for hair salons, barbershops,
Nail,
massage,
massage,
those
that kind of
of-
stuff. So it would all be,
Therapy.
it'd be congregated in one building.
Yep, just in Building 16 is how they've labeled it. I'm not sure how they came up with a numbering system with 20 buildings, and some of them are in the 60s. But It is what it is. And it would be the one labeled as building 16, outlined in green.
To rehash what I think you've already said, everything in red is already built. Is that
Yes,
correct?
correct.
So blue does not exist. The unit 16 does not exist yet.
That is correct.
So when we make our motion, do we need to be specific if we want it to be just to that building to indicate building 16?
Well, if you do the motion as recommended on the motion that's before you, it would indicate that it'd be subject to that condition that I read that would make it subject to buildings, limited to building 16.
It says to one proposed building, but it doesn't say specifically which building.
Yeah, it's just the final clause says, subject to the condition listed in the staff report.
Gotcha,
Which
okay.
would limit it to building 16.
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, I do got to have a question. When you talked about on criterion 3, this came forward for a rezone to I-2 to the Plan Commission. So why not, instead of variance of use, why not a rezone here?
Well, because we don't have a zoning district that would allow these uses to mix together throughout the property.
So they'd have to replat it to get a lot to be able to do a zoning to a separate lot.
I mean, yeah, that would theoretically be a possibility, but I don't think that we would probably want to rezone one building surrounded by other buildings of a different zoning district, all within one property that would perhaps look like a spot zoning, which is, we typically try to avoid.
Okay. And then on criterion 4, on the hardship, I guess I'm having a hard time with the hardship, and maybe I'll save this for general discussion here, what the petitioner has to say.
Anyone have any other questions for staff at this point? We're right here from petitioner.
Thank you. Joel Bruns, 5645 Castle Creek Parkway, Indianapolis, 46250. Jump there. I see. Okay. Okay, so Rise Commercial District, we are a family-owned real estate developer and operator of small warehouses, flex spaces, small offices into almost like a business incubator accelerator for entrepreneurs and small business. Paul did a great job describing our business model and our sites. So we've been around for about 15 years. We are thrilled to be in Avon and looking forward to continuing our growth in Avon. So all of our sites, they have about 100 different unique businesses on each location. That's about 450 employees within those businesses. We have a very diverse tenant base with service-oriented companies, trades, general contractors, logistics, e-commerce, a very diverse tenant base. And so, we have small offices on our space. We have flex spaces, which are offices with a connected warehouse, along with some amenities, shared conference rooms, forklifts, all secured behind a gate with plenty of cameras for security for all of our tenants. So it really does turn into a small community of like-minded and entrepreneurial business members and business owners. So we have salon locations in a number of our other sites. We have 14 sites right now across 5 states. And so we've experienced this as a complementary use to our majority sort of light industrial usage. And it works very well in a lot of different locations. Like Paul described, we're asking for the variance in order to allow us to do that service-based, retail sales, service and repair, along with the typical light industrial uses on our site. So We do believe that it fits very well with the zoning and the contiguous properties around, which includes a C3 property, as Paul described, along with the rain corridor overlay, which is about innovation and supporting business growth in that area. So currently, we cannot do that within the current zoning district. And we've had a number of potential tenants come to us and ask for this space. And we're not able to rent them space because of the restrictions of the current zoning, this would allow us to house them, to rent to them, and help support their business. So we are, like it already has been discussed, just focused on building 16. Our building numbers, by the way, they do have there's a method to that, which the different numbers mean different things internally for our systems. An 80 series building is a certain size units versus 60 buildings or 50 buildings, things like that. So, so the 16 building would be up front. It is facing Ronald Reagan, and it would be a similar front facade to the other buildings that are facing the street. So we talked about where that is on the site plan there. And this is the floor plan. So you can see how the salon area is just in the front of that building. It's a similar floor plan, honestly, to what we have in our building 15, which is where our small offices are located, and our manager sits in building 15. So a number of smaller salon suites for tenants to rent out. We have a break room, a laundry area, a number of bathrooms to service those salon stylists, and their customers. So it is just, our request is just focused on this building, and primarily, as you can see, it's just in the front of this building. So the back will have, similar uses, flex spaces in the back of the building, which we've already been approved for on our site, and we already have operating in a number of buildings. So, I've discussed the facade will be the same. Will fit and unify with the rest of the site. And you can see some pictures here of just the interior finishes of what we've done in other locations. So, intending for this to be a high-end space that a lot of stylists, massage therapists, barbers, people of that type are going to want to be in, as well as their customers. So, thank you for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Before we get into the questions, we'll open up the public hearing at, looks like it's 6:53. Would anyone like to speak? And with no one coming forward, we will close the public hearing at 6:53. And we'll open it up for discussion and questions and.
So how many of these projects do you have that have the salon services
This
buildings?
would be our fourth,
This would be out of how many?
14.
Out of 14. And is this something you anticipate doing in future projects? Okay.
I guess I was confused when I read this, because I was wondering if you had a tenant for this, but this is actually something where you're building out the building ready for, 10 people who want to bridge the gap and take the leap into, okay.
And so if we're to look back at the site plan, you would see all those buildings in red. Those are buildings that we are going to be building in this next phase of construction. I may have that backwards, but yes, we're building all of those. This would be one of those buildings in this phase of development.
How close is that building to other, light industrial covers a bunch of stuff, from people who are actually building stuff to e-business, that sort of thing. How close is the salon services building to other areas that might be more machinery and that kind of thing?
Sure. In terms of proximity, the salon is facing the front parking lot along Ronald Reagan. That's outside of our fenced gated area. And so all of that is accessible to the general public. And then most of the heavier industrial, which is, we really truly are a light industrial.
Right.
But a little bit more industrial or mechanical, like you described, storage, warehousing, things like that, are oftentimes behind the gate. They want the security, they want to they're concerned about the warehouse area only. Whereas this is facing the front, more accessible. And so, yeah, it's mostly geared towards the back of the site where you'll find businesses.
Paul, sorry, I wanted to go back to you for a quick, before I get into my next question here, I just want to make sure. Is the variance the only thing that they need, or do they need to go in and get a modification for their DPR for this?
No, that just the variance, the DPR from, I believe it was 2021, it allowed all these buildings to be built. So they wouldn't need to go back and modify that.
Okay. So my question based on that is, this is on the Reagan, it's a right in, right out. You know, I don't think there's any question that we're going to increase the amount of trips generated to this site with this use. And then you've got this mixture of industrial traffic, which should be lighter with this more, I guess you call it commercial trips, like you'd expect to be generated through commercial use. And I guess I'm looking at it one of two ways. Number one, what does the addition of this one building do to the ingress and egress on that site? And I guess the second thing I would go to is, do you plan on developing more units? Do you plan on building more units like this on this site?
I'll be able to respond first.
Yeah, so from the standpoint of how we looked at the traffic consideration was that some of the uses they already have here and some of the uses that are permitted in I-2 are office uses that can be, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers' offices, any professional office other than medical or dental are permitted in I-2. And so we looked at this type of use where our understanding that you're typically going to have, let's say a stylist, they're going to be dealing with one customer, maybe they have one waiting. That could be very similar to what you'd have, with a professional office where a person there is dealing with clients just the same. So we didn't really think that traffic would be, especially heavier. And again, with the nature of these industrial uses being so small scale, we believe there's little, if any, large truck traffic to this site. So we really didn't think there would be a conflict there. And then I think the second, I hope that answered the part for me. And then you had the question for him about future development.
Yeah, and I would concur with that. The majority of our site is very low on full semi-traffic, heavy industrial traffic. And so, we have some straight trucks, box trucks, things like that for deliveries. But overall, the gate count on our sites is very low traffic. We're probably about 150 cars a day. So we're very low traffic. And yes, this would increase some, but like Paul mentioned, it's very similar to the office component that we have, which is a similar footprint in building 15 to what we're describing in building 16. And secondly, to answer your question, no, this would be the only building that we are planning a salon or a beauty use for this entire site.
Okay.
You've got 2 retail locations already on site with your existing clients. What retail do you have?
Actually not sure exactly the retail.
Because I would think it'd be about similar.
Category. I can find that out. But most of our folks, whether it's e-commerce or some of the professional office type folks, they may have some customers come in to a flex space, for example, that they have a little larger space. They may come in, meet a client or a customer, and then do transact the deal somewhere
Call
else.
that retail, okay.
Yeah, and so some of those, just from an industry standpoint, probably have gotten included in that sort of retail category by someone on our team. So I wouldn't say that we are typical in the sense of retail, as in people are coming in, buying goods, from a store, like a typical retail center.
And if I can just add to that, because I've been working with Joel's colleague, Zach, throughout the process here. And I included that tenant list because I had asked Zach just to kind of give us an understanding of what kind of businesses are currently operating there. So when he sent that, he had indicated to me that 2 tenants listed as retail, that those are retail companies utilizing our warehousing units for their retail brands, but do not sell or exchange on site. So from a zoning ordinance standpoint, it would sound like those businesses don't meet our definition of a retail sales.
Like it could be
use
the
that isn't
financial
permitted.
office for a clothing store or something like that.
Perhaps.
We have a number of businesses that will do packaging or, routing of some items, things like that are more, consumer goods or retail oriented type businesses, but we're helping them some of the back end service type of components for their business.
So question for you, Paul, then. If this is approved, is this a use in addition to all the other uses that have been approved?
That is correct. It would add just these specific uses of wellness and beauty services to the list of uses that are already permitted in I-2.
Okay, but it doesn't, that allows them that if for some reason the demand for this business goes away, they can still use it for any other use there. It doesn't restrict them to just this.
That is correct.
Okay. And then, do you anticipate with getting the demand for beauty and wellness, seeing that there's another building to the south that's proposed, is that anticipated that you might get, has there been other types of businesses that have come in that have asked and it's not approved right now?
I wouldn't anticipate that, no. I think the overall approval from a zoning standpoint fits and allows us to, run our business fairly well. This would be the one that we, like I mentioned, we have added it in a number of different locations, and we find it to be an acceptable complementary use. And so, no, we don't anticipate any other, various requests or petitions after this, and everything else will fall within the current zoning approvals.
All right.
Do you have a date that you're ready to move forward?
We're hoping
New
to.
tenants, or do you have
Yeah,
tenants already committed?
yeah, we have tenants who are interested now. Obviously, it's gonna take us a little time to finish construction. And so the construction is just getting ready to get going. And we're hoping to get this approved so that we can adjust plans accordingly in order for us to construct this and get it done, hopefully by end of spring, early summer next year.
And Paul, I think I was going down the same road as you are with respect to criterion 4 and the unnecessary hardship. Boy, the explanation in here is weak. At the same time, I think they're just asking for a little bit more flex in their, what I'm calling flex space. It's definitely reaching, but I could be persuaded to reach a little on that.
Yeah.
It's
I
not,
mean,
it's not a huge ask.
This is when this first came to us, it was presented to us as a unique project, providing something that isn't available elsewhere. And, it's the stepping stone between people who are just working for someone else and wanting to go on their own versus getting a big commercial space. And I loved that idea because I like it. It's very entrepreneurial. It puts having your own business financially within the reach that you might not otherwise be able to do. And beauty and wellness services are absolutely in that category of people who've been working for a salon for years, want to go out on their own. Same with massage therapists and stuff. And to me, this feels, especially with it being limited to one building and it being away from the larger, more industrial, mechanical type of stuff, and with it being right off Ronald Reagan, so customers are not having to drive through the rest of the property. They're able to turn in and park. I really like this.
Yeah, where I was going when I first looked at this is like, typically or what I've seen is, I want something different than what I came to before when I presented this because of whatever factors I just want or demand. but this is really another service, and I don't disagree. I mean, I agree with the discussion here. It's a service that's in demand. It just doesn't meet our zoning.
And we just,
ordinances.
there is no zone, I mean, we're kind of in a, no, not a no man's land, but we're new territory when it comes to zoning for this particular type of project.
Yeah, I mean, if a business took off and they say, well, now we'd like the entire building to be a salon, is that something that you accommodate that, or is like, now it's time to move on and,
Yes.
okay, all right.
We, our business model is focused on those smaller spaces, like the size of our warehouses, for example, are around 300 to 4,000 square feet.
Yeah.
300 is where self-storage stops, right? And we fill, and then there's a lot of spaces that are getting into small bay industrial, it's 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. So we fit this niche that's right in between there, that's very underserved in the market, and we are laser focused on that.
You used the word incubator, and maybe we need to have a zoning that is entrepreneurial incubator, because that's really what this is. And, you know, commercial and industrials kind of sort of fits, but yeah, I like this, and I would vote to approve this.
We would love that zoning, by the way. We have this conversation often, because we live in kind of this gray area in a lot of zoning codes. And so the flexibility here, yes, would be greatly appreciated.
No, I love the concept. I love what you've done with it. It's something that we've needed. I think the the co-working space is wonderful. And yeah, if you've already got, you know, the accountants and guys like that already in there, again, it's, the explanation is reaching, but like I said, I'm willing to reach a little bit on this one. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know, I'm really skeptical about unnecessary hardship. You know, you've heard me talk about it before, but I think staff hit this nail right on the head as I read it. And I think it goes to what Catherine was talking about, is that if you had an entrepreneurial flex incubator zoning district, that you could have, you know, put a different color on this zoning map. That is really, when you heard the rezone, that's what you would have done. We just didn't have that. And so now it fits in this crack, you know. But I thought Paul did a really good job of explaining criteria 4 and saying, well, you know, there are a lot more intense uses that could be in there, and we're okay with that. There are less intensive uses like offices and what I do think, like back end retail, you know, where they assemble things or they package things or whatever, and so that they don't have to have as big of a store, you know, in a retail setting. But that's a little more active in their deliveries and in and out. So, but I thought, you know, again, being a skeptic of when someone says there's unnecessary hardship, I really agree with the logic and the rationale. It's because we don't have the zoning district for these types of projects. So we just put the round peg where it fit, close as we could. So this is in that way, a really perfect case for use variances. And I'm not very fond of them, but this is, to me, exactly. I think your discussion is right there. Just thought I would add.
Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve VARU 2508 Rise Avon Personal Services, a variance of use to allow wellness and beauty services within one proposed building, which is not a permitted use in I-2 because it will meet all the requirements for a variance of use under state law, subject to the adopted findings of fact and subject to the condition listed in the staff report.
We have a motion by Mrs. Ransberg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Tashler. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Guckenberg,
4.
Inman. 4. Ransberg,
4.
Tashler, 4. Turner.
4.
Thank you.
Next item is other business. Do we have any other business for tonight?
We do not.
We've already approved our calendar for 2026, correct? That was a couple months back. Okay.
So your next hearing will be on January 20th.
Wonderful. And if there's nothing else for the good of the cause, we are adjourned. Thank you.